What's up, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny. Not too much to talk about tonight. It's more bad news for Thailand. Thailand's introducing a new $9 or $10 tax to enter the country. Allegedly, it's going to be for a multitude of things. Supposedly, partly to cover insurance costs for when you go there, and for other things too. I don't want to get into it. A couple months ago, maybe it was 6 months ago, Cancun, the state of Cancun, as opposed to the federal government, started, I think it was a $12 tax to fly out. This is just more of a trend where more and more governments are going to be taxing you or adding on fees to visit the country. Like I said, some are going to increase those things and make it more difficult to enter and to live there, and others are going to decrease it. So far, it seems like a lot of countries are making it harder to travel to their countries or their respective countries. There's some more bad news, I think. I'm not really sure. I wasn't planning on going to Mexico. I might go to Mexico because I actually want to see what's going on. But there's more and more news that in about half the states of Mexico, and I didn't really do any wide research because I don't know how this is really going to be enforced, but half of Mexico, well, the article says half of Mexico or half the states, you're going to have a COVID card to eat at a restaurant or to do stuff, probably even maybe to get on a bus. I don't know. I better walk that back because it's hard for me to see how this is going to be enforced, but more and more countries are saying they're going to do it. But saying they're going to do it and enforcing it is two different things. So there's that. Then I've been seeing videos there's more and more videos coming out talking about this trend. All this stuff is related, at least as far as I'm concerned. More and more Americans are giving up. Basically, there's more people filing for unemployment. So that came as kind of a shock to the market, I think. Even though unemployment is really, really low, there's still lots of people walking away from their jobs. And I want to be clear here, it's not really even just low-wage jobs. As an example today, I saw a news article, I think it was the United States Army, but as one of the branches of the United States Military Services is now offering a $50,000 bonus. It's a sign-on bonus, but you have to stay in the service for 6 years. That's a nice chunk of change. Despite the inflation we're seeing, it's still a nice amount of money. But that's an indication they can't get. The military is having a hard time getting people, just like all these corporations. And I want to make another point. There's quite a few jobs, like I've been reading about, that pay a couple hundred, like 100 to 200,000. They can't find people. My point would be, if you really have skills, there's really jobs out there. If you really don't have skills, in my opinion, there's not a lot of jobs out there. I think this kind of a misinformation where there's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of jobs available to people who have skills. Like I'm thinking trade skills and white collar skills. That's what I'm thinking. And white collar skills, I don't know what you call them, but related to software development, things like that, software engineering, things that are not my toolkit. I don't know anything about it. I just know people who do those jobs and who've talked about they can't find people. And many of these jobs that pay $100,000 to $200,000, I'll just add real quickly, do not require a college degree. They require technical skill and basic skills like getting up, going to the office if that's required, or getting up and just going online and doing the thing that you say you're going to do. That is becoming an in-demand skill that employers can't find. Just getting up, doing what you say you're going to do. And this is all related because there was an article in the newspaper about, I think in Miami, a Wall Street firm had bought up some properties and then raised the rent 60%. Now, I think that was intentional. All over the United States, rents are going up about 20 to 30%. And it's causing a lot of protesting. It's causing a lot of homelessness. And I think it's causing people to quit their jobs and just saying, the hell with it. If I can't pay these high prices, I'm just not going to work anymore. I'd rather just be on welfare or live on the street or whatever. People are just giving up, and I don't think that's good for our society. Anyways, it's all these things combined where you see men giving up, in particular, since I watch a lot of men's channels like self-development, things like that. You see a lot of men give up. They don't even want to compete to get women. They don't want to compete to get a business or a high-paying job. And I'm not against young men wanting to play video games all day and get high, but I'm not really for it either. I just think it wouldn't be a life that would be inspiring to live for me, but I can understand if you do it for a year or two until you get tired of it. In fact, I'm thinking of the natural resource sector when I say that, because back in the 80s and 90s, one of the billionaires now, I can't think of his name. He's Canadian, I think. I want to say, I can't think of his name, but one of the billionaires, there's a couple of them I'm thinking of, but one of them, he's famous for when back in the day when he used to do various drugs and things like that and bum around India. Then he got into natural resources. Then he became an entrepreneur, CEO, raised capital. And then just, he just went with that. So I'm not necessarily bad-mouthing young people or anything. I'm just saying it's become this huge trend. It's really kind of scary to think about, where you're going to have, or already have had, young men and women, but especially men, waste a decade or more of their life not really doing anything. And now we're starting to see that reflected in the economy. I think it's why you don't see a lot of progress like you did in the 80s and 90s. It's way more complicated than I'm saying. It's like this inflation we have. People are talking about, well, prices are high because of the infrastructure, or the supply chain infrastructure is all messed up. That is true, but it's made to be messed up because of the inflation. That's what people don't seem to understand. Then you combine that with shutting down the supply chain for COVID. Those are two separate things, and they're both really, really important to understand, so you understand why prices are rising. But even when COVID is over, which I don't think it ever will be, but even when you stop all this nonsense, you still have the problem that inflation really disrupted the supply chains of the United States and all the world. I mean, I could go on and on. Like, just as an example, Thailand has super high pork prices because of shutting down the supply chain and because of inflation. China has really high pork prices because of that. And again, I know it's complicated. Look at Europe right now. In Europe, gas prices, I think, are 4 to 6 times what natural gas is in the U.S. If I remember right, natural gas in Europe is 6 times the price of what it is in the United States. And I know it's very complicated. Like, my opinion, the reason why gas is 6 times the price in Europe is because Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, France, but Western European countries, excuse me, pursued an energy policy of shutting down natural gas, shutting down coal, and shutting down dirty energy, but nuclear, coal, things like that. And they put all their capital and investment and infrastructure into sun and wind, which is fine. But when you get an unusually cold winter or unusually cold months, that all goes out the door. Anyways, Germany is now learning they really messed up. So what happens when you mess up and you don't have infrastructure in there, or you're not willing to use your natural gas, you're not willing to use your coal, which Europe has a lot more coal than people realize. You're not willing to use nuclear. Now you're more reliant on Russia. So if Russia wants to shut off the gas supplies, they can, and now you're vulnerable to that. Now you're vulnerable to what the United States does. Like just as an example, the United States, our companies have sent over a lot of liquefied natural gas to Europe to alleviate the crisis there. Now, I got off on a long tangent on energy, which I didn't mean to do, but part of the reason you're seeing lots of homelessness, lots of people giving up, is because they can't afford these high prices. So they say, the heck with it. I'd rather be homeless. I'd rather be on some government aid program, or I'd rather live off someone. There's a term for that. I forget what it is, but it's popular amongst young people. It's hobo something, but people basically living off other people, living off their parents, living with other people and performing certain kinds of favors so they don't have to pay rent. That is going through the roof in the US and in Europe. In fact, I would say the United States is more like Europe now, because this has been the case in Europe for a long time. Because the welfare state's really fallen down, or really is creating incentives for people to not be productive. And now that's happening in the States. And now we have a situation in the States where, like, whether COVID is a thing or not, it really doesn't matter. The U.S. inflated so much money in the last 2 years. They either have to raise interest rates and collapse the economy, or they have to deal with a slow collapse of the economy through inflation. Those two choices aren't good for the growth of the economy and productivity and prosperity and for the whole world or the United States or whatever. Anyways, I've been watching a lot of videos on men giving up, not pursuing family formation, not pursuing women. And I don't blame them because of the way things are. But I'm saying totally giving up isn't really an answer either. At least to me, it is not. Giving up jobs even, or working or running a business, is really quite sad to see. And when you have this kind of, I don't want to call it a welfare state, but it's partially a welfare state and partially there's enough ways to earn a small amount of money to get by. Like, I'm amazed, and I suppose Europeans are amazed, but people living on $300 or $400 in the United States or in Europe or whatever, they go camping or they live on the streets or whatever. They figure out a way to make it work instead of, and I'm not saying it's for everyone to pursue a career or anything. It's not what I did, but I did pursuing as a career more investment and trade and stuff like that. I used to be a tradesman. And speaking of that, another reason people are giving up is because they don't think it's worth it, because I'll talk about pensions and housing right now. Now, I've been hearing I watch a lot of news on macro information as far as the economy goes. And right now, the average house cost in the U.S., or the average price of a house, is allegedly $400,000 USD. I thought it was $350,000, but I'm going to go with all the numbers I've seen. But whether it's $350,000 or $400,000, you really need to earn at least $60,000 to qualify for a mortgage, and you need two people to be on that mortgage to get it, as a generalization. When you can't afford to buy a house, and then even if you can, but you're going to be on the treadmill for 30 years with a really high mortgage, with a really overvalued house, that's not going to incentivize young men and women to be productive and work. Now, I want to combine that with, this is really, really fascinating. I saw this today. There was again, I think it was a mainstream press release. And I don't know if it's true or not, but because it's mainstream, I realize people are going to believe it. But it had said that U.S. pensions now in the U.S. are well funded, which I don't think is true. Leave in the comments if you think that's true or if you believe it. But I don't know if it was CNN or one of the financial channels, not CBS or not CNN, CNBC, I think. They had said now, the article said like pensions are well funded. And I thought that's not true. Okay, I used to work as a tradesman. In general, I worked as a welder for like a long, long time, but I've also worked in manufacturing and things of that nature. Anyways, I have a pension from when I used to work in the union. And the last time I was in the U.S., my mom gave me the letter because I have all my mail sent to my mom. So every time I'm back there, I just kind of go through it. Anyways, this letter has said my pension was, they sent me a letter in previous years saying it was well underfunded, and now it's really, really underfunded. That's why I'm laughing and chuckling, because you don't even know what to believe anymore. Anyways, this article alleges because of all these stock market gains, all these pensions are well funded. Now I can tell you with my pension was unique in that they didn't make a lot of investments in shares or stocks. They made a lot of investments in real estate, and a lot of their real estate investments have collapsed from 2008 on. Or at least what they're saying is these real estate investments have not turned out the way they planned. And they had a smaller proportion of the assets into shares. So they were even more unfunded than they were previously. And they were saying to me, I belong to a tranche. There's different tranches in this pension that I'm in. For the 5 and 10 year vested, we would be wiped out. Maybe not now, but in the future. Or we'd be having a massively reduced promised pension, which wasn't that much to begin with. Anyways, that's just one thing. But when you consider the fact that for a lot of workers, their wages aren't that high, that's another thing. The inflation numbers just came out at 7%. I don't know if it's the producer price or the other one, but I personally think inflation is going to go down. Not a lot, but it's a little bit. But rents and food is not going to go down. It's not going to come down. It's just other things. And there's, people are going to be not really believe the numbers, but the numbers of print next year, I think, or now to next year are going to come down. Just not a lot. But rents have been going up 20 to 30% in the states and all over. In fact, there's one state where rents have not gone up, and that's Nebraska. And I think it was Nebraska for one-bedroom apartments. In Nebraska for like 2 or 3 bedrooms or whatever, however they measure it, they have. But Nebraska was the only state where they didn't go up for one-bedroom apartments. And I'm trying to remember this thing I read where one-bedroom apartments are like, I don't know, $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 now. And for a lot of places I know of, it's closer to $1,600 to $2,000. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because the majority of the people in the United States, and I would guess Europe too, I don't know, I'm not an expert on the macro situation in Europe, but the majority of people in the States are not making enough money in raises. And that's been the case for the numbers coming out. They are not getting enough raises to cover the cost of living going up. Now, the people making 6 figures who are getting 20 to 30% raises, their wages are going up to cover the cost. And I would just say they're just going up to cover the cost. They're not going up above that. So people who are getting 2, 3, 4, 5% raises, their standard of living is just going down, and their quality of life. I say quality of life because crime is just going through the roof all over the world. I've been making videos on how crime is going up in Latin America, and I know people still in the States. My parents live in Phoenix, and I have relatives in Minnesota and Iowa and, all over, but primarily I keep in touch with people there, and crime is just going up through the roof. And it's crime against your personal property and your personal body. So violent crime is going up. And I don't see that really trending down much until we get this AI and these robots and all that. Then I can see where they're just going to go hard. I believe the U.S. government is going to be like China. They're going to go hard on criminals. They're going to start locking them up. Not now, but I'm saying in the not so far future. And it could get really, really ugly up there. Anyways, this trend of people kind of giving up is kind of distressful. It's not a cool thing to see when you think about it. And I think right now, because of the way COVID's going, I don't think people are going to get real productive and do all what they do. What I see happening is what I see happening in my comment section and what I see in other people's videos. More and more productive people are going to be leaving the USA and going to other countries where they can be productive and have a low cost of living. And I want to just mention it real quick. One trend that's on YouTube that's really going up that I wasn't aware of is videos that talk about what you can get for $500 or $1,000 in Latin America and in Asia are going through the roof. So people who have channels that primarily do what $500 gets you, what $1,000 gets you in Asia and Latin America are really popular. And I believe it's because people are looking for really cheap places to live, and one of the highest cost component they think about is the cost of their apartment. And when you see how little you get in the United States in the Euro area, I can see why that's becoming popular. But anyways, getting back onto the topic, what I see happening in my comment sections is more and more people, if they want to live in the United States and the Eurozone, they're going to find smaller communities that they can actually afford to live in and be a part of that community. When I say be a part of it, that's another thing where people don't interact face-to-face as much anymore. They interact online more and more. So you can have like a dividing of society. People who are interacting online in the metaverse or watching porn, playing video games, smoking weed, doing whatever drugs, and basically living in the what some people are now calling the metaverse. And there's going to be more and more people who want to live, I hate to say the real world, but in the non-metaverse world where they're going out on dates face-to-face. They have face-to-face friends. They're not using dating apps. They're meeting women more organically. They're meeting men and women organically for business relationships, for friendships, things like that. And they're going to be doing that in the smaller communities in the United States and Europe. And the ones who don't want to do that, they're gonna go offshore. And I can see it like I just have so many, and I don't want to say contacts, but I know so many people in Mexico telling me like prices are going through the roof, despite all the problems with Mexico, despite cartels, despite these other problems with, the vaccine mandates in some states and all that kind of nonsense. Because people just cannot afford to live in the U.S. and they don't want to live camping outside on the streets, and they don't want to pay $2,000 rent when they could just live in Mexico for $1,000 and save $1,000. Anyways, that's one trend that I see is people who want to build a business have like more organic relationships with women in the opposite sex and whatever it is they do, and have a more organic business where you have face-to-face relationships, are going to do that more and more outside their countries of birth. And some countries are going to make it easier for gringos and foreigners to come live in their countries, and other countries are going to do the opposite, make it more difficult. That's why I don't really have any hard and fast, easy and good advice. And I want to say thank you to some of my new subscribers and all my subscribers, but my new ones who have been pointing out to me, like, it used to be you had to pay money to go to Paraguay to get a visa, which I already knew that. But I had, in the last, I'd say month, I've learned Bolivia. You can go to Bolivia for 30 days for free if you're in a U.S. passport holder, and you can go to Paraguay. Now, Paraguay would be more important for me, but that's for business reasons, which I won't go into here. Like knowing that I can go down there, pop over to Paraguay without, I forget I used to know all the process of getting the visa, but I don't remember anymore. I think it was $150, $160. But it's not easy like it used to be, but it's still doable where you can get a residency if you have $5,000 cash, you're willing to deposit in the bank, and then now you got to get an FBI background check. You might and then when you're in country, I do think you have to get a medical check. But basically, because of the devaluation of the Paraguay guarani, again, I know I'm probably not pronouncing it right. It's a little under 5,000, I think, right now. You pay the government fees and lawyer fees or whatever it is you want to do. You can do it yourself, or you can, hire a lawyer or whatever. But so you have those fees plus the 5,000, which is really easy. But what's nice about it is once you get your ID, you can use it to access the surrounding countries. And then there's some other things, like there's a big land border with Brazil. Brazil has a big land border, which I won't get into why that's important. But anyways, you can be in an area and then you can travel in the surrounding countries. But other viewers would say, well, yeah, but Johnny, you could get it's actually easier to get citizenship and much faster in Brazil. And I'm totally aware of that. So and I would say it's a better passport to travel under. And Brazil has a really porous border, and it's a long one too. But there's just opportunities and all those things I'm talking about. But if you want to follow the law, if you want to jump through the hoops, Paraguay is still kind of easy. But I was thinking of popping down there. But if I were to do that, I would probably run up to the U.S. and get an FBI background check and try to gain a residency, because that's one of the places where you can get a residency, but you don't really have to live there. You just got to be there, I think, 1 day a year. I might be wrong. You might not even have to do that. But if you're not really there 6 months out of the year, they won't give you a passport. And that's a generalization. There's always exceptions to the rule, but that's just a generalization. But just to have a place that you can fly to, live, work, and play there legally, set up bank accounts. Another thing is their banking situation is kind of unique, which I won't go into here, but it could have advantages for Americans and especially Europeans and Americans. I won't get into that here because it's kind of controversial. But you can have U.S. dollar accounts and settle U.S. dollar business in Paraguay really, really easy. Maybe not cheaply, depending on how you do it. But even if you do things a certain way and it's cheap, it's still, you can do it. If you want more privacy, you're going to have to do things another way. But anyways, that's beyond the scope of this video. But their banks are I don't want to say rock solid, but their banking practices are super conservative compared to other parts of the world. But that's true in general of most of Latin America. It's even true of large parts of Asia. I'm not talking China. I'm talking like Thailand, Philippines, other countries too, where like in the Philippines, something like 25% of the depositor's capital is actually in the bank, as opposed to in the US where it's 1% or less. In the US, they lend out all the capital that comes in, so they don't really have a lot of reserves. Whereas in Asia and Latin America, it's usually 20 to 30%. So their banks are much, much more stable. I'm just saying in that regard. Now, if you put your money in a really teeny tiny bank where a politically connected person runs it and then runs off with your money, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the large high street banks in those countries. Anyways, I got off on a tangent there, but I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to talk about it more in upcoming videos, but there's not really an easy solution for everyone out there who wants to change up their life, because there's countries like Thailand that's almost on a daily basis or weekly basis changing the rules of just going there. And now you have to do the quarantine again, which is another $1,500. But previously you didn't have to do it, and then you did, and then it was 7 days, and it was 14 days. When you have all that like uncertainty, people aren't going to go. And Brazil, it's less like that. Latin America in general is less like that. But anyways, I'm getting off the subject. But there's going to be solutions, in my opinion, especially with technology, but it's probably not going to be for everyone, and everyone's going to have to decide how they manage all this risk. But anyways, for right now, I see a lot of chaos in the world. More and more people are going to be migrating out of the U.S. into Latin America or Asia or wherever they want to go, looking for low cost of living and low taxes. And for right now, you can do that in Latin America. You used to could do it in Asia, but even the Philippines, you can't go there on tourist visa right now. As far as I know, today is the 13th, so I'm not sure if that's even changed. Eventually it'll change, but like just a tourist visa, you can't even go there on a tourist visa. So anyways, that's it for tonight. But I do want to make a video on what I think is a kind of an elegant way or a simple way for people to expat, and then a more less elegant way that's a lot more money involved. But I see two options. People are going to have to choose option A or B. A is if you have a lot more money, you're going to have a lot more options. If it's B, you still have quite a few options. You're just going to have to do a few more hoops to jump through. And if you don't want to do that, then it may not be productive for you. But for someone like me who likes to not really live in one place for a long time, it doesn't really bother me that much. And then I think as time progresses, some of these countries are going to change their laws. And I don't know if it'll go back to normal, but it'll be easier to live in a country long term without having to jump through a lot of hoops. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks.